In this episode of A Girl and a Gun, we talk about the federal budget and how that impacts upon the screen industry. Pozible is now open to non-profit organisations for crowdfunding. And John tells us all about the NAB Show and what came up at the SMPTE Forum.
All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Come along and join the party while we stare at the sun.
Hello, welcome to A Girl and a Gun, the show for filmmakers and content creators. I am Phil Moore, and as always, you are John Maisels.
I am, in fact, John Maisels. Excellent. Hello, Phil. Hello, everybody.
It's been a busy week this week, in fact. This is our first
certainly
official
has.
show back with our new group. What have you been up to?
Well, been here, of course, with all the group. Hi, people, and that camera. And we had a very important SMPTE meeting last night, the post-NAB bash, at which we all heard what had happened at NAB, and we'll be back to talk about that later in the show.
I missed it, so I want to find out what happened at the show. There's not a lot of news stories this week. The big one, though, this week is the budget. So let's get on with the breaking news of this week. Yes, indeed. Tuesday, a couple of days ago as we speak, the Liberal government put down their first budget, and
I think it's like normally you would say they brought down their first budget.
I
think everybody else is putting it down, but that
well,
would be
yes,
putting it
indeed.
mildly.
We'll talk in terms of the screen industry. We have here an article from If magazine by Don Gross, but of course it's been reported everywhere. In terms of screen, ABC and SBS have had their funding cut
What a surprise.
by about 1%, and Screen Australia will lose about 25.1 million over 4 years in funding.
That's a pretty significant amount to lose.
Yeah, this last financial year they got about $100 million, and so now they're going to cut that by 5.2 million in the coming year and then more in the subsequent years, which doesn't seem like a lot, but they're already pretty tight. This is like the belt tightening budget, but if your belt is already so tight there's nowhere further to go, it's like, what do you do?
I'll tell you one big win though. There was a big threat to the funding that supports community radio stations. And I mean, that's a small amount. It's like $15–16 million through the main funding, and it was preserved. There was a massive campaign. And I think they had like 50,000 letters went off to the Treasurer saying, don't cut our funding.
Right. Well, they actually say, the government says here, the government claims that savings can be achieved without cutting programs or compromising editorial independence.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, if they're so tight already, where are you going to cut it's going to go somewhere. The ABC will lose about 35 million, SBS about 8 million overall. You know, so I actually surprised it wasn't more, to be honest. We knew cuts were coming in these areas, but it's like, I'm surprised that I was afraid it was going to be more.
Yeah. So, of course, if the government is pulling sources of funding, the next source that everybody's going to look to is phone a friend, call your mates. So Pozible is in the news.
Well, indeed. This is actually a bit of good news, potentially, for some people. Pozible, which is a crowdsourcing website, Australian-based crowdsourcing, like Kickstarter, like Indiegogo. They have now opened up the rules in Pozible so that charities and non-profit organisations can raise funds through crowdsourcing. If you are a qualified deductible gift recipient, a DGR as they call them, you can raise funding through Pozible, and those donating to you can get a tax relief. It's a tax write-off.
Well, there you go. It's a win-win situation for those organisations that can do that.
So this applies obviously to any charity organisation seeking donations. You will get your donors will get a tax write-off. But imagine you're a non-profit film co-op or theatre co-op or music group or something like that. You could raise funds for your group this way quite effectively, I think.
Well, I'm going to stick my neck out and guess that this applies to organisations like Metro Screen, which are private providers teaching in the vocational space, but which also do production. But certainly they'd be the sort of organisation.
In fact, there's a group I'm involved with where I live, which is a non-profit group, a film collective, raising funds to do production and training, all this kind of stuff. And we may be able to raise funds thanks to this.
So watch for Phil raising money, the Fillmore South America Fund on Pozible sometime near
Well, the group is actually called CCUP, it's on the Central Coast. So look for SEACUP, is a non-profit group of this kind that might be able to now have a better chance of raising funds through this.
Excellent.
Now, SMPTE and the NAB Show. What did they have to say?
Well, it's not so much what SMPTE had to say, but what some of our members. So we had a couple of people, Stuart Poynton from LEMAC and Trevor Bird from 7 Network, both went and came back and did major reports. The report from LEMAC will be going up. They shot something like 5 or 6 hours of video over the 4 days, edited down. We saw a 37-minute cut that was just breathtaking, and I thought I'd go through some of the things that we had there.
Just a taste of what they offered.
Just a taste. So here's a couple of things that you might want to go and look at. Kinafinity, never heard of these people. They're from China. They've produced a new camera. This is a 4K camera, and if I remember correctly, they're saying this is under $6,000.
The Kinamini.
Yeah, Kinafinity.
Yeah, that's the company, but the camera's called the Kinamini.
They have a couple of different products. They have a 4K product, a 6K product, and if you happen to be in China, or turn up, you can actually buy accessories directly from them. You can't do that for overseas people.
So again,
yet.
another little black box camera, 4K.
And when you say black box, doesn't it look like a box brownie?
Really?
Just like a box brownie. So, okay, that was one thing. Okay, now I'm going from memory because I haven't got my list in front of me. So what was it I said was going to be next?
lenses.
Okay. So, of course, if you've got the camera, you're going to want to put a decent lens on it. Zeiss were doing a lot of strong work in conjunction with ARRI, but also there's a great report they did in their own right. And they've announced, of course, a new range of primes and some new super quality short range and long range zoom lenses. Well, you know, here's the thing. You're going to buy a camera, a 4K camera, a cinema quality camera, for $6,000, you're going to spend about $35K on a prime to put on it to get a decent picture.
Good glass costs.
Absolutely, but good glass, you know, so like absolutely essential if you're going to do the right job.
And Zeiss do excellent glass.
They do.
Absolutely. Meh to 4K, but more
Meh to
HDR.
4K. Yeah, this was,
This is from
it was
Variety,
a great article in Variety. Just look at this. Meh to 4K. And what they're saying is that the new screens that are coming out, the high dynamic range screens, are just making absolute impressions where people thought, you know, 3D is going to be the answer and 4K is going to be the answer. 2K on a high dynamic range screen looks absolutely exceptional. So now, what do we mean by high dynamic range? Your average screen runs at about 100 nits. Now that's like the level of brightness. It's not, you know, your screen is an idiot, or your screen might be an idiot.
That's a
100
whole,
nits.
we'll go
It
into
is.
nits, but that's another discussion.
It is.
Yes.
So 100 nits, this is the amount of brightness coming off. A really, 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 really bright screen at the moment would probably be 300 or 400 nits. The precision display that Dolby are currently selling for grading and so on, that puts out about 600 nits, and that's enough to make it very difficult to take a picture of it because it's so bright. Well, the thing is, as you get the screen brighter, you can have a greater differential between stuff that's dark and stuff that's really bright.
That's the dynamic range.
And the dynamic range. And so at the moment, if you were going to show, say, a scene of a fire, or you were going to show a scene of somebody grinding a piece of metal. You know, on a grinder, you've got sparks coming off. Yeah. And those sparks, really, the brightness, it's just compressed to death. It's hardly as bright as it is. On these really high dynamic range screens, you just see the brightness coming out at you.
Well, the trick here is, if you've got a screen that can handle this, you need cameras that can capture the footage in HDR to show.
No, the thing is, the cameras can capture
They-
it.
yeah,
The
they are,
displays,
yes.
the displays are absolutely the weakest link. And this is also true in cinema, where what you see on the cinema screen is often the least
Yes.
bright, particularly 3D movies, which are shown down around
You lose
10,
half the
10
brightness
foot
because of-
lamps. Oh yeah, it's like you've got to be in the dark. You see nothing. So we'll talk about high dynamic range screens in the forthcoming
I've
program
been
and show
really
you why
looking
they're so
forward to
exciting.
HDR coming to motion video,
Yeah.
and it's now really starting to happen.
And by the way, not talking about today, but both Barco and Christie have announced their 6 primary, as opposed to 3 primaries that we'd normally have. So 2 reds, 2 greens, 2 blues, 6 primary laser projectors. And
Yes,
again,
I heard about
really
these,
bright. So
yes.
we'll cover that in a later show.
Okay. Blackmagic Design.
This is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Blackmagic Design have been acquiring a lot of companies. They acquired Syntel. Now Syntel is just one of the old names in the industry, producing telecines. So in the days when everybody's shooting on film and you needed to transfer that to video, you used a device called a telecine.
Yeah.
Basically a projector that had a camera attached directly to it. Now you can now get one of these telecines in the order of tens of thousands of dollars. In fact, what's really amazing, let's just have a look at that picture again. It looks more like a piece of furniture that you'd have in your home, just really wonderful. The thing about this is it's not actually a telecine in the sense we understand. It scans the full width of the film. So that means in one pass, at full speed, it's also grabbing the optical track.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you've got the frame and the sprockets and anything that's there in the optical track, and then you can go and separate those out.
Yeah.
So in one pass, you've done
Do
absolutely
you know
everything.
how large a frame it 35 mil?
35 mil.
Up to
The whole width of the 35 mil film.
right.
And they
And
were,
what's the why release this? I mean, digital cameras. We're not shooting on film anymore these days. So
yeah,
why?
because
release the
we've
telecine?
got 150 years of legacy material that is already 4K. And this is the point. People have been shooting 35mm film since day one. It is inherently 4K
Well,
resolution.
depending on what you scan, but it can be 4K. Yes.
Well, not on what
Yeah.
you scan it. The film carries that much information. So what we used to see in cinemas was, in fact, higher resolution than we're now seeing in cinemas.
Yeah.
And when we go to full 4K, that's what we'll see.
Yeah.
The-
So
the-
now we can scan all that archive footage
Yeah.
at 4K resolution and preserve it basically,
and pretty
then
much,
restore it
pretty
and
much,
everything.
this is the last. This will probably be the last telecine device
Yeah.
ever made and produced.
But I gather the price of this makes it much more affordable for people who it's been out of the reach of being able
it's
to
an
do this.
extraordinary
a lot of
device, and
films.
again, we can talk about that in
Yeah.
a later show.
Finally, the one you picked out here is what is this one? DYVI.
Oh, Divi.
Divi.
Yeah, Divi. This really has to be seen to be believed. Like, if you look at that picture there, it looks like a standard production switcher. And it can operate like a standard production switcher, but this is really anything but. And the two things that differentiate it from normal technology that we might know and love. One, it's all based on IP and engines. So you feed your sources into the engine, all the traffic goes in and out over TCP/IP. It's all synchronized, it works really well. And you can have multiple engines. So you could have 5 or 6 cameras at, say, a surf event, and all of the signals coming back over a dark fibre to be switched back at an outside broadcast truck or a studio or a control room anywhere else where you can get the signal. But you could also be switching that locally at the same place using the power of the same engine. So there's one of the things you can do.
I
This
look at that
multiple
thing-
engine approach.
I look at that and I just see lots of buttons.
You see lots of buttons. The other thing is that this panel is completely programmable. And where we think of a normal switcher as having multiple mix effects rows, so you set something up on mix effect row 1 and you cascade that into row 2 and you cascade that into row 3, that's how you would use a traditional switcher. On this one, you can say, well, here's an effect I want to build and assign that to a single button. So you're not actually tying up multiple rows to get the effects that we do every day.
Yeah.
Everybody who is doing news will be tying up 2 or 3 mix effects bus just to get those boxes over the shoulder and the titles and everything else. This thing does it in a single button. It requires a completely different way of thinking, but you can run it the way a traditional switcher would work while you get used to it.
So this is for live broadcast multicam.
This is for
Remote.
everything. This is truly, I think, a game changer. Definitely watch this space. It's being delivered in the second half of this year. They've got live customers, so it's not vaporware.
Okay. I want to finish on with something that's a bit more cinema related. The people that made a short film called Construct, robot film. Now, to make this film, it's a CG animation, but they've come up with a very interesting technique of how they did this. This is the website, Creators Project. And if you, we actually have behind the scenes of their film. You can go to their website and have a look at the film itself. But I want to show a bit of the behind the scenes. The technology involved in this is quite innovative. They've taken ray tracing from games and applied that to live motion capture. So you can see the models moving in real time with your actors. Let's have a look at the behind the scenes of this right now.
We're in here at the Just Cause Entertainment motion capture facility. We have our performers, Dan and Roberto. What we'll be doing is tracking their performances that are being acted out in this volume here. Path tracing in real time through V-Ray inside Motion Builder and displaying it on the OptiTrack's Insight VCS camera grid. Down here, we have the 3D Box 4920 Extreme GPU Edition, and it's housing NVIDIA's K6000 and K40s, each with 12 gigs of video memory. You take this, you look at yourself in the mirror. So what's going on now is I put up a mirror in this environment, and now Darren, as Bill, is going to go up and look in the mirror at himself. Let's see this. Pause.
Pausing.
Play.
Playing.
Woo! Play.
See my own feet, my own robotic feet.
Yeah. What this is enabling us to do, film a performance using the same algorithms now in real time that up until now have only been reserved for offline rendering that could take minutes or hours to produce. This allows me to compose the frame to color and light. Previously you were just staring at grayscale characters moving around. It looked very crude. Play.
Playing.
You address the camera, Darren. Look down towards us.
We need to do a lot of work up here.
Pause.
Still got a lot to go.
Play. So we just shot a take of Roberto and Darren fighting each other. Now we want to review that take. So what we can do now with V-Ray for Motion Builder is replay the take while it's path tracing in real time. So this is the take we just captured, playing back in real time. And at any given moment, we can pause it, and it resolves to final quality. This is a great way to evaluate how the lighting and shaders behave in the take that you just captured. Now that we're using these algorithms that can scale to a final production frame, what you see now, you know is what you're going to get.
That's dope. Now, put that down.
That is some amazing looking previs. And I don't even know if you call previs it.
Okay, so there we go. That was using like a standard games NVIDIA graphics card in a regular computer, doing real-time. You see the low res, which is the particle effects, but then when you freeze the frame, you actually see full ray tracing in there, which normally you have got to go away and render it to get any idea what the lighting's like.
I think most people don't have any idea of the amount of power that exists in today's graphics cards. You know, the ones you go and get for $100 and you whack it in your PC. And this has more power than 3/4 of the computers of the world put together 20 years ago.
So if James Cameron was doing Avatar now, he'd probably be wanting to use something like that to
probably
see what he's actually getting.
Shooting in real time.
That's from the creatorsproject.vice.com. Check it out. Have a look at the actual film that they shot with that technique. It's a very good film. But now we're going to move along because we have a couple of Pick My Brain questions. And our first question is, let's have a look at it.
My favorite movie has actually always been The Matrix. And there's that one iconic scene, I've always wondered how they do it. It's where Trinity gets paused mid-kick and they do the entire spin around 360. And I've just always wondered, it's a movie filmed in 1999, and even for a film coming up to its 20th birthday, it's still a fantastic scene.
Okay. The old bullet time matrix trick.
Okay, so how was that done? I've seen people, I saw somebody actually do a satire of that on stage using a springy thing.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
I remember seeing this effect first done in a music video, in fact, but then within the year, the Matrix used the same trick.
But this is like a gigantic rotoscope.
We've got a website that actually demonstrates how this was done, and you'll see here they've got a green screen, and Keanu Reeves is surrounded by an array of still cameras in a curve there. And what happens is, you go into the pose, or the action happens, all the still cameras fire at the same exact moment.
Yeah.
And then you bring that into an editor and you just line them up as frame after frame after frame. And it does like a turning, it's like a camera dolly shot, but they're all from the same exact moment in time. And you get this moving still
So
effect.
if the cameras are like 1/24th of a second apart,
Yeah.
then it looks effectively the same as a 24-frame camera moving around the shot.
Exactly, and you can see in that one where they've shot it all against green screen and they've obviously comped in the background and stuff. So you can have a sense there of another version of this large array. People have got more complex with it. They've had camera arrays that go all the way through a house, and you can freeze this entire motion of, then in CG, you move the camera within the house and you've got all these frames you can pick from, basically.
This thing of doing pictures with multiple cameras and multiple images is in fact again, it's a major topic that we might talk about in a future program.
And people have replicated this. That was using like high-end cameras. You can do it with a whole range of DSLRs. You can do it with GoPros these days.
You can.
Yeah, just got to be able to fire them all at once. That's the trick.
And if you do, then you can go with, mathematically, you can go back and resolve all kinds of stuff that no one of the cameras might have been able to see. So you can actually change your focal point, you can change what you're looking at. Yeah, this is all this...
Which I gather was something that came up at the NAB show, a camera that, there was a technique for choosing multiple focal points, and no matter where they moved, it would follow it. It would track it.
There was a slightly different piece of technology, and we did see that last night. We saw the example of that, where you attach a sensor to the actor, and the person can move around, and the camera does a focus follow.
Tracks that.
It tracks that. Does this mean the death of focus pullers? Meh, possibly not yet.
That'd be really useful, I think. Anyway. That's how Matrix did it. It's called bullet time. It's an effect that's been used famously in that film, but in lots of other things since then.
Okay.
We have another Pick My Brain question, so let's have a look at this one.
I'm making a movie with my DSLR, but the problem is the sound isn't that good. How would I improve that?
How do we improve sound when shooting with the DSLR camera?
Yeah, well, of course, and this is true of small handy cams, small snappy cams.
Any camera,
any still camera that will do movies. They generally have a built-in microphone that is completely crap, and they have mono recording that is completely crap.
The rule is never use the inbuilt mic in any camera.
No,
for the most part.
And pretty much because you can't hide massive XLR connectors.
So what you do?
Does it? So
what you do with a DSLR or any other small camera? One option is to get something like this. This is the Sennheiser, which you can put on the mount and you plug that in. That's a slightly better option than the built-in.
Which will give you mono audio, but at least to give you good mono audio.
So for dialogue, that's fine,
Yeah.
but that's better and it's more of a shotgun mic. But the better solution, frankly, if you're doing film especially, is to use a separate recorder. Something like the Zoom H4n.
Okay, now this is what we used to call, in the days of film, double system. It's
Double
what
system.
we did.
Two system. There are, of course, much bigger and more professional recorders, but this is perfectly adequate. You use this, it's a stereo recorder, and you get a microphone, which would be on a boom pole, of course.
Of course.
Get a decent microphone, a good quality microphone, shotgun condenser, as we talked about in our special tutorial. Plug that into this, and
And the back falls off.
record that way. Record your sound separately.
Yeah.
With here as a boom over the subject. Have the camera record sound as well. That's your guide track. And then you synchronize them together in post.
And of course, you just do the traditional clapperboard.
That's what the clapperboard is for.
Yep.
Although, these days, frankly, you get a program called Pluralize, and it does all the synchronizing for you, even if it doesn't have a clapperboard.
Excellent.
As long as you've got sound on the camera and a separate sound.
And if you were going to take this to its logical extension, you'd be recording the critical sound on a device like that,
Yep.
then you'd have another one of those recording stereo Atmos.
Yes, indeed. You can, and this can do stereo Atmos with the ones in the front. If you just want to
It
get
can,
wild
but
tracks.
this can only record 2 channels at once.
But the new version will do both. We'll do 4 channels. There's a newer model of this. This is the older model. The new model does
We'll do 4 channels. So there you go.
Yeah.
You've got two tracks of your talent or whoever's in the shot, plus 2 tracks of Atmos.
Indeed.
And you fix it in
So
post.
that's how you do it. 2 system sound. With almost any video camera, you should be recording sound separately on a dedicated recorder like that, and have a person dedicated to sound recording, watching the levels, focusing on that. Don't ask your cameraman to be the sound guy as well.
Never, never, never.
Okay, that's our show for today.
Fabulous. So much stuff we've covered so quickly.
Thank you so much, John.
Excellent.
Thanks
Thank
for
you, Phil.
the wrap-up of NAB from SMPTE. And thank you all for watching. That is it for A Girl and a Gun this week. You can find us at agirlandagun.tv. Follow us on Twitter at A Girl and a Gun. And if you want to email us or send us any Pick My Brain questions, email us Veronica at A Girl and a Gun. But that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Where am I? That's the camera. That's the camera. There I am. That's a wrap.
All you need to make a